Alrighty, we are in for a beautiful session with a rather popular face if you don't know him. We've got Eric Nowoslawski over here. We are going to be talking about how he has built one of the most successful agencies in the world, and that is
we have now reached a level of outbound volume across all of our customers that we are now breaking the normal processes of most tools.
you use a ton of data points, right? You mentioned over 20 data points to feed your system.
We need staging, we need enrichment, and then we need production. Production's the easiest because it's just Smartlead. The middleware between that is Clay. And the biggest lesson I would have for people is open up a Supabase account and start caching your data. And that's basically like one of the biggest unlocks that we found for ourselves. Last month on our Smartlead account, we did like 5.2 million. So across everything, we were probably encroaching 6 million emails. One big thing that I've learned is to always be thinking about error handling.
How the hell this man somehow manages to personalize at 6 million bloody emails every single month. What is up, everyone? We're back again for a beautiful episode with the ever so famous and powerlifter Eric Nowoslawski, with the hair at the back and muscles to die for and automations to kill for. We are going to be talking about how he has built one of the most successful agencies in the world, and that is why, if you're watching this video now or later, he's one of the core people and agency owners speaking at the Clay Sculpt event amongst some of the brightest minds in our space, from Anthropic to OpenAI to Cursor. So, Eric, thank you again for jumping on. Can we kick off?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the overzealous introduction. Thank you.
Of course, that's part of the job, my friends. Part of the job. Anyone who gets me Chick-fil-A gets that intro.
Yes.
Sweet. So, first question, mate. We were just talking about this. You use a ton of data points, right? You mentioned over 20 data points to feed your system. Before we jump into the stack, how do you think about data with respect to your start of the engine, mid of the engine, end of the engine? Like, how important is data compared to your CRM? How important is that to your sequencer? How important is that to your, enricher?
Yeah. So let's start with my biases, because there's definitely people out there who know. It's so funny when I tell people that I run a marketing agency, they're like, "Oh, you must do this." I'm like, "Not at all." And they're like, "Do you do this?" I'm like, "Not at all either." And it's so funny how so specific we are in specifically this marketing. So our bias is towards top of funnel outbound prospecting, just getting prospects who have never heard of us before, sending a lot of emails, and then getting hand raisers from there. So I don't even really use CRMs in the way that CRMs are meant to be used. We pass that for our customers to be able to use. So what's crazy, and this is what we're talking about before we started recording, is we have now reached a level of outbound volume across all of our customers. It's not just one customer that does it to us, but across a bunch of our customers, that we are now breaking the normal processes of most tools. Even like the fact that on enterprise plans on Clay, everybody can do this. You could pull 50,000 contacts into a Clay table. That's just not fast enough for some of our customers to be able to pull things in. So we just came up with this process. So it's funny I'm talking about this. What we've discovered is we need staging, we need enrichment, and then we need production. And so very quickly, I know everybody goes 1, 2, 3, but production's the easiest because it's just Smartlead. The middleware between that is Clay. And then sometimes we're doing the data sourcing inside of Clay. But then a lot of times we are taking 2 or 3 hours, depending on the size of the customer. And we're actually opening up a $15 HubSpot account for them. And because a lot of people don't know this, you can open up a $15 HubSpot account. We are not exploiting anything. By their rules, you can have 15 million contacts in this HubSpot account. And what we'll do is we will take 2 hours or so and process a lot of the data through some data sources like Apollo, or scrape LinkedIn, or we'll use the Clay data or whatever it is, and then just pack that HubSpot with either a bunch of contacts that are relevant for us or a bunch of companies. And so then that becomes our staging area, where then we basically say, okay, for this customer, and they need a dedicated HubSpot because otherwise the API limitations just run up against things. For this customer, we have, let's call it 800,000 companies that we could possibly reach out to. We add a property to the company and we say, have we already processed this in their first batch or not? What is it? Blah, blah, blah. And then we use Clay's automated scheduling to then be able to suck in 50,000 records from HubSpot, process all of them with the find people searches and all of these things. And then Clay does all of that enrichment after we process the company, and then we process the people. And we obviously process the company first so that you don't have to, triple process the company data afterwards. And then you just keep the lookup square and together. And then we're pushing everything through the enrichments and then sending them through to Smartlead. And for anybody who's then listening to this and they're saying, oh, but Clay's find people data isn't on par with some of the other tools, that is just a acceptable mess that we just take on, where it's just like, hey, I also think if we were to get all of our data from Apollo, a lot of people don't see it, but the derived data points inside of Clay is a new thing that they added to the enrich company function. And when you're finding companies, you don't even have to pay for these data points. The data points are so crazy. There's like, what's their pricing structure? Are they B2B? Who do they sell nationally? They give you a better description than the LinkedIn company description. There's so many things in there that you can filter off of that I think we're probably mistargeting some people because of Apollo company filters, which on them, like I'm actually still a fan of Apollo. We have an Apollo account. It's just for everything that we might be including too much of in Apollo, I think we're better targeting by using this Clay methodology. And then if we miss contacts, that's fine. And if we really feel like we need to get back, because the Smartlead API, we can also just go back and process the Apollo contacts and see if there's anybody that we missed, and then look up to see if the lead has ever been added to a campaign that shares the client's ID. And that's how we can go one pass through and get this large data warehouse of all this data done, but then also come back around and make sure that we've re-hit truly their entire market before we have to restart reusing lists. So now this is crazy because I'm talking to the guy that when we first started, I was like, Vaibhav, how much do I charge and how do I do it? And you helped me get started. And now
look at where you are right now, man.
Yeah. And now it's so crazy that we have to literally be creating data warehouses per customer for probably about like 9 customers we've done this for. That's so that cool. We can process this in a timely manner and make sure we're staying ahead of their leads. So we're a little bit different with like how much volume we're pumping through. We've broken a lot of API endpoints, sent a lot of emails of like, I will pay you money to go faster. Like, please just go faster. And so it's like now it's very much a much more organized operation to be getting much more high volume
nice
data through these campaigns.
Nice. Eric and I, we've built a special deal with Smartlead, but regardless of that, the thing he got the most happiest about was when we jacked his API limits up. That was when he got the most happy. So just for your reference, he's an absolute nerd with this, and they absolutely hammer our API, and we love it.
That was
that will guide me to the next question. Let's talk about your Clay to Smartlead workflow. I think you sort of walked us through that to a decent chunk, right?
I have like a Wi-Fi by a regular internet provider, and then I have Starlink, and Starlink is the emergency one. And I was just on the regular internet provider, but I'll switch to Starlink and see if that works better. It's so important that we spam. It's so important that we spam people that I have 2 internet providers at my house. That is like how important this is. Okay, maybe we just redo that question. Sorry about that.
Your ATM machine. I love it. The question I was sort of running into was, we sort of just jumped into it, but just let's poke a little further. Walk me through your Clay to Smartlead workflow, because I feel like you've got such a unique setup compared to most, and so many people can actually learn off that. Like, walk me through a specific example of how you move data through your system from initial prospecting to final email delivery. Let's just pick one sample. I think people will go nuts over this.
Yeah, and the biggest lesson I would have for people is open up a Supabase account and start caching your data. And that's basically like one of the biggest unlocks that we found for ourselves. And the reason I say that
in the Postgres one, is it?
Which one? What'd you say?
Supabase as in the Postgres one, right? The one with Lovable.
Yeah, supabase.com.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, you're
and so I've already been told that it's going to get buggy at our size and we need to move to Snowflake or whatever. But
yeah.
Data engineering nerds can figure that out for me one day. So our data pipeline to this point, most of the time, is pulling data from Apollo, and either we're staging it in that HubSpot that we were just talking about, or then we're just putting it directly into Clay for processing. And whether we stage it in HubSpot and it gets put into Clay for processing automatically, or we're manually importing the CSV, both of the processes are the same. And so the first thing that we have to do, because we're so email heavy is our email verification waterfall. And so this is why I think no matter who you are, you should be caching your data, because Clay is very much a middleware. It's not like the benefit of Apollo is as soon as you unlock a credit, you have that credit unlocked all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to remember that for you. You own that credit. It is what it is. Boom, you're ready to go. In Clay, they don't have that process. It's a completely different tool. And so one of the things that we started doing was we were saying, hey, we're processing so much email validation data, and we're definitely paying over and over again for these email accounts. So the first thing that we do is we will run through and we will first look up the Apollo email in our Supabase account and see, okay, hey, have we ever looked up this email before? And this circles back for in a little bit, but have we ever looked up this email before? If yes, when was the last time it was verified? If it was verified in the last 90 days and the domains match of the person that we uploaded, we're pretty set to just send people that email again. Then if we don't have a lookup, we then verify it with Lead Magic first, because Lead Magic is just the fastest provider with the best outputs that we've seen. So we'll verify it with Lead Magic first. We have, and this is another really interesting lesson that we learned with Clay. There is a Easter egg of a formula that you can, it's called like get status of sell or something like that. It was one of my LinkedIn posts, and maybe we could put it in the show notes. What we will then do is if Lead Magic fails because we ran out of credits, we then move to Prospio's verification. And if Prospio fails because we ran out of credits, then we move to Million Verifier's verification. So even on our email verification side, we're playing this game of like, even if there's a failure, and then you have to use the get sell status one, because you can't just do like, oh, if email is not verified from Lead Magic, verify it again, because you're just going to keep getting the same results and you're just going to keep paying over and over again. So we have 3 verification steps to make sure that none of them fail. And then Million Verifier has top ups and is super cheap. So that's always the end one there. Then again, whatever we don't validate from Apollo and we don't look up, then we go through our email waterfall to try to find them. So then in that order, we go Lead Magic again for speed. And they just released this new feature, which is the first email provider I've ever seen to release a feature that they're looking up the employment history of the person as well, too. Yeah. And if they have a valid email, but they've moved on to another company, they're, telling us about that. Then we go Prospio, because we're like OG Prospio fans. And then we go ICPs. I think ICPs in our testing has done, if ICP says it's valid, the likelihood that it's valid is the highest thing.
The highest
and
one.
And then TriKit at the end of that as well then too. All of these baked into the conditional formulas of if we run out of credits of any of them, just keep moving on. And then we get all of the emails from those. If like Lead Magic finds an email, we're not finding another one with TriKit because we're just taking one shot at it. Then one more time through with Million Verifier. And then our email verification step is almost done. Then we're just dumping all of that data back into Supabase, where we just do a lookup and we say, hey, here's today's date. Send all of the data to Supabase, cache all of it. So if we found any new emails, great. If we updated any emails, great. Cache all of that data. And then what we will then regularly do is then some people are like, well, why are you doing the lookup on the Apollo email address? It's because regularly we will run a Python script to unite our Supabase and HubSpot data. Because then there's another quirk for the nerds out there that HubSpot integrates perfectly with Apollo. And so any email address you have with a first name, last name, and some other parameters, you can then unite your Apollo data with your HubSpot data, and then we can constantly keep those email addresses. So anytime we're sucking out email addresses, we have this like circle of just keeping all of this data really, really fresh. No exploits. This is all like, this is how they want you to be using. This is how they want you to be using the platform. And so then that's how, like, if we find a new email for somebody, we know that we're like looking up another good email in Apollo and we're keeping that data fresh. And then in order to get into Smartlead, basically from there, it just depends on what the campaign. Then we tell the team, you cannot launch a campaign. You cannot launch any enrichment without a conditional formula for like master email column is not empty, and that's
Cool.
the final validation of the email column. So we're not wasting any money on things past that. And then it just really depends on what the campaign calls for. A tip that I've talked about all the time that I'll just mention is we never write the full email and then send it to Smartlead. We always are just doing like little snippets and then AI generating the parts that we need, because
Yep.
you don't like you the more words that you output with AI, the more risk that you're taking. And so you don't need to output every time. I saw on your website that you help people with email outreach. You need to output email outreach. So like just keep, I saw you help people static and then just AI generate the rest of it. And then we're pushing it into Smartlead.
Yo. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
saying yo because you verbatim. If you look at the Smart Writer code base, that's verbatim what I do. That's like one
Yeah.
to one. Like this was 5 years ago. Prompt engineering, like when we were doing smart, that's like we do static plus dynamic because you give AI even a little bit of flexibility and just does stupid shit, right? So
And then I also see that if we also tell it, so technically we're AI generating that line sometimes, because technically I saw on your website that you help people is technically AI generated, but we will prompt it and say, do not change this part. This is the prefix that you need to start with every single time. So then
mm.
also it like knows what the sentence is going to be. So then it outputs better things from there as
Yeah,
well too.
yeah,
Yeah. When
yeah,
I was working at Clay, that was like maybe one of the first things that I discovered that I was like, oh, you need a prefix here so you can like control the message and
yeah,
what it's
yeah.
looking like. So, but so yes, that's, I mean, and so for people who are like, yeah, but Eric, you send, we last month on our Smartlead account, we did like 5.2 million. So across everything, we were probably encroaching 6 million emails. And so people might be saying like, oh, this is just for you. But you reuse a lot more data than you might think. And I think everyone could really take advantage of having a $15 a month Supabase account. Even if now we don't really save, like in a perfect world, I would like to be saving. We use Claygen to find case studies on people's websites pretty often. That's just like one of my favorite Claygens to do. I would like to be caching that data in a Supabase somewhere. We just haven't
Mm,
really
mm,
gotten it there.
mm.
But that's like things that if I were restarting, I would start those processes as well to just, if you've got the data already, don't, give it up, just keep it. So it sounds complicated, but caching your data is something that I recommend everybody do. And then if somebody's like, well, why don't you just use a CRM? The API just isn't fast enough at our scale, and it usually starts blocking things. And
Fair.
so you can always have a data warehouse for again, $20 a month, and then have it write Python scripts to just over time just keep your other CRM stuff updated. Because the API just doesn't run fast enough on the like, because we also have a $15 HubSpot plan. Like it's just not running fast enough, or $20, whatever we pay. So anyway, it sounds complicated, but a lot of the recommendations I have there in the redundancies of the verification
Yeah.
providers, in the redundancies, and making sure that not just like if it doesn't find anything, you have a redundancy. If it errors, you have a redundancy. Those I
Yeah,
think
you
are
you
things that
you
everyone
built
can
a
learn
proper
from.
waterfall system on a bunch of catch-alls, like try catches, right? Like if it fails, you've always got a mechanism, so your system's buttery smooth. You've never got a blocker. So
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
kudos.
Exactly.
That's actually really, really good. Jesus, all right. Whoever's watching this, rewind, go through that, because I assure you, that's gonna be something that if you do that, that's massive, game changer. Because you've completely verified your leads, you got your clean lead set. You're gonna go ahead and set up a VLOOKUP. Well, not VLOOKUP, an almost SQL setup for your Supabase side. Oh boy. Okay. Lovely, lovely. I am going to just take that high and go into the next part, which is
Great. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
6 million mails. Right? If you're pumping through 6 million mails, I'm going to break this down in two questions. One, SL does your inbox rotation and bulk sending and all that jazz, the analytics for you. What's your current architecture with respect to domains, inboxes? How do you manage that complexity? Part A. You're welcome to drop it into part B, which is how do you handle deliverability at this scale?
Yeah. Well, and I think both of them are basically tied together. So the biggest thing is I probably got to 50K MRR or something tracking opens the entire time. We never turned off open tracking. And the reason being is I'll never forget this customer. We were getting leads for this customer all the time, and we would track open rates still. And I was like, huh, it feels like 4 days since we got a lead. What the heck is happening? Their overall open rate said 60%. So I was like, okay, this is totally fine, whatever. And then we still weren't getting them leads. So I was like, let me click on this. And I clicked on it. And it was just, we had such great deliverability. And then the last 2 weeks, we were getting like a 20% open rate that overall, I didn't see it in the overall campaign statistics. And so I really like tracking open rates so that we always have knowledge of, is this landing in spam or is this landing in
Mm,
inbox?
mm, mm.
Now, in today's deliverability, where you send a tracking pixel and people are getting that gray bar that shows up saying like, hey, do you want to mark this as spam as something?
Yeah.
I don't really love that. So what we started doing is two things. One, we basically, if the email reputation in the Smart Lead warm-up pool drops below 98%, we're pulling that inbox out of all of the campaigns. And so we just find like as soon as,
98%. So you're
yeah,
hypersensitive. Okay.
yeah. So as I've
Okay.
just found, as soon as there's a little bit of an issue in the warm-up pool, the
Yeah.
prospects are feeling it a
Mm,
ton.
mm, mm, mm.
And then the second thing that we just built, and so we're automatically running that on a daily basis. So as soon as something goes below 100%, we're pulling that out immediately. Then what we will also do is every Thursday and Friday, and we're actually thinking about just doing it on Fridays because we're getting enough good data on this. It's
Mm-hmm.
already the lowest reply rate day of the week. We're automatically going through our campaigns, and we could turn this on per client. We don't have to turn it on for every campaign for every client. We will automatically go in and turn on open tracking for their campaigns. So then we can get a report on Saturday of, okay, did they get, we're looking for over a 40% open rate is really what we're looking for. And if it drops below 40%, then we have this automated, but I sometimes like to just look at it myself so I also can just see what's going on. We then will pull out, a lot of times if you're getting a 40% open rate or below a 40% open rate, you have some inboxes that are getting a 60% open rate and some
Mm,
inboxes that are getting a 15%
mm,
open rate. Now, I've gotten haters in the past who tell me, well, it's totally possible to go to spam and still trigger the automatic open thing. And it's like, yeah, I guess so. But every time I've purged the campaigns of the 15% open rate inboxes and then left it
that's
with
perfect.
the over 40% ones, our reply rates go up. So you got me, but at the same time, the effect still works. And so in order to manage this, that's, we're doing both the inbox reputation within and then also the open rate, because we tried doing reply rates per inboxes and like keeping track of out of offices, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like if you're sending on one inbox, especially with Hypertide, you're sending like 15 emails a week from each inbox. It gets kind of tough to really say like, oh, this one is burnt because it didn't receive any replies or anything like that. So that's why we opt for the open rate slash the inbox reputation.
Okay. Fair play. So warm up score, open rate, surprisingly. That's a fun one. And just, yeah, I guess keeping a very strong pulse on the analytics. If the open rates drops, you know you're using that as a quick pull out. And then do you rotate, when you rotate the leads, are you okay with the fact that the leads will be left halfway hanging and then you put in another mailbox that sort of carries on with a separate
Yeah.
login?
So one, because in my opinion, email one is more important than anything else. So I don't really care that, like, because technically that lead is stuck now and it's going to just move to completed in Smart Lead because you've pulled out that
Yeah,
inbox.
yeah. Yeah.
And I don't really care at all about that because we will resequence these people again. Like we're probably coming back to them. We're only sending one or two, maybe three emails in a sequence these days. And so then we will be back. We will hit these people again. It's fine. Just the effort that we would have to like then set up a system to resequence these people perfectly and make sure they got email two, but it wasn't a threaded email and like all that other stuff. It's
Mm-hmm.
just not something that we really think about.
Fair play. Makes sense, man. Makes sense. I've got one last question for this episode. Well, actually, two. I was lying. Um, you're one of the power users for our APIs, right? There's no two ways to sort of call that out. What advantages or how do you Smartly's APIs integrations for your broader data stack? Or is it just kind of what you walked me through, which is you use it for your analytics, you use it for ingesting and inputting data. Do you use it for replies? Do you use it for anything else? Do you use it for any automations outside?
So I'm trying to get to a world where I would love for people to just never even have to sign into Smartlead because you have so many APIs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we are using it for the analytics. We are probably even using it wrong for the analytics because since we built that, you released the global analytics, and we should probably be using that because it's a much more straightforward API than the math that we're doing right now. Um, and then, so we are using it for the analytics. We're using it to ingest. We're also using it in some cases to just make sure, like, hey, have we ever reached out to this lead before for this
Mm,
customer?
mm.
We're doing that. And then a lot of the stuff around the like pulling out the inboxes, of course, that we just spoke about. I'm trying to think of even like a classification of your API that we don't really use.
You discover
Maybe
APIs all the time. Or you discover features of the product all the time anyway.
I know, yeah, because it's like I will then come back to the page to then check on something. I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize we had this many APIs. Maybe the only thing we're not really using is the master inbox APIs and
APIs.
things like
Yeah.
that, just because I would love to use it. It's just not a bottleneck that we're thinking about right now. Like
Fair play.
every day, I'm thinking about how do we get healthy inboxes always pumping out to net
Mm,
new leads. Like that's
mm, mm, mm,
the biggest thing I'm always thinking about. I
mm.
would love to use the API to build like a Slack bot so that customers could respond to leads straight from Slack and all that other stuff.
All that
But
jazz.
that's fine. We'll get there one day.
Fair play. Fair play. Well, I'm gonna love giving you access to agents so that you can just automate the
Yes,
crap
yeah.
out of this. Cool. Last question then. One technical insight when building outbound infrastructure that most agencies miss.
I think I'm not sure if this is what most agencies would miss, but one thing that I've had to learn, because as you know, I'm not actually technical. I've never
Oh,
code
you don't give
anything.
yourself credit for that, but you kind of are, to be
Yeah,
honest.
I guess a
But
little bit, but I don't custom code anything. I don't do any of that.
sure. Yep.
What I would say is one big thing that I've learned is to always be thinking about error handling. Because really, like, even though you souped up our API, which I really appreciate, we are still running so many things in so many different places that we still need to be thinking about error handling. And so a lot of
Fair
times,
play.
if we had missing data in the past, if we handled the errors better, we would be covered on that. And so what we'll do now is like in our make.com things and our N8N things, we will now branch like the whole same workflow where if there's an error, it literally pauses the whole workflow for 30 seconds and lets it just breathe. And then we rerun the same exact thing. And then when it's successful, we'll come back to the beginning and then hit it again.
Fair
Um,
play.
that's maybe the biggest thing that, like, when I was building things, I just didn't think about. And now I'm always thinking about, as you can tell
Fair
with
play.
how many backup steps we have for verification and all those things, I'm always thinking about, okay, what are we going to do if this errors?
That kind of adds up. If you didn't say that, I would have expected some other genius thing that perfectly makes sense. That error handling, if your goal is automation, which every agency's job should be right now, makes perfect sense. Well, Eric, thank you so much. I'll see you in the next episode where we're going to be talking about how the hell this man somehow manages to personalize 6 million bloody emails every single month.
Yep,
Eric, thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one.
absolutely.